So we are here at 4C's 2016 in Houston, Texas, with the Digital Archive of Literacy Narratives.
And I am Cynthia Self.
And I'm Michael Harker. And we are here collecting stories about people's experiences with literacy. Right now we have around 6,000 literacy narratives that are archived at the daln.osu.edu. And just this year, we also started our blog, the daln.wordpress.com, where are the two places where you can access and view the literacy narratives that we're collecting.
We have the largest online collection of publicly available literacy narratives in the world. And it's a project that is freely available to any teacher, any student, any citizen, anywhere in the world who is interested in literacy, either working with literacy or preserving literacy history or stories or doing research on literacy. That's what the Digital Archive of Literacy Narratives is for.
You know, and a lot of people, when they come to our booth here at 4C's, they'll sit down and begin talking about their literacy narrative, and they'll wonder what they're supposed to tell their story about. What is a literacy narrative? And one of the things that we tell people is that a literacy narrative can be about your earliest memories of your experiences with literacy. It can be about maybe your favorite book or books that you're reading, or the experiences with literacy that you have in the workplace or in your teaching. So it doesn't necessarily have to be just a standard definition or understanding of literacy. We have a very broad interpretation of what literacy means. And so really anything that's related to reading and writing in any form is welcome on the archive, and it's something that we want to preserve for forever. We live in a really interesting time right now with respect to literacy because of the many ways that people are communicating with digital media and digital composition. And we can't help but think how exciting it would be if we had literacy narratives archived from 100 years ago. What would that teach us about what people were thinking about literacy then? And so our hope is that 100 years from now, people will be able to look back at this really exciting time with these new forms of composing and new forms of writing, and have these archive stories with people talking about what literacy meant to them in 2016. So that's one of the reasons why we're doing it.
And it's especially important this year, for example. Think about our elections, right? And how people get their information about candidates through reading, watching TV, composing letters to legislators or to newspapers. All of these would be great fodder for a story about literacy.
And there are other, and that just reminds me of some of the other questions that I receive about the archive, about why this project is important. You know, not only does it give people an opportunity to talk about literacy and mark a moment in time, but it's also a part of a much larger initiative, and that is to get people to think about narrative and literacy in the same way that they think about other big projects. Louis Ullman, who's a co-founder of this project with Cindy Self, always talked about how this is a big humanities project. We're all familiar with big science projects like mapping the human genome. Well, the DALN is a big humanities project. And so that's one of the really exciting things about an archive like this, is that it gives the humanities a chance to say, we're mapping something too. We're mapping the human genome of literacy in a way by collecting as many narratives as we are.
It's crowdsourced, and it really does take a village to tell the story of literacy. There's no one path to literacy, no one type of literacy, no one location for literacy. And if every single person tells a story about their own literacy, we have just narratives laden with information that people can use to research, to teach, to think about literacy, and to practice literacy.
And I think a thing to remember is that you don't have to come to 4C's in Houston to share your literacy narrative with the DALN. You can go to daln.osu.edu, record your narrative on your computer, compress it, and upload it directly to the archive itself, and fill out all of the forms that are necessary to make it a part of the archive. And you can do that today.
And it's important because we want people from every walk of life to contribute. One of our proudest moments this year has been the work of a graduate student,
Paige Harrington,
who actually wrote a letter to Jimmy Carter and asked if Jimmy Carter would contribute his literacy narrative. And he did so. It is on the Digital Archive of Literacy Narratives and freely available to everyone. I love this story because he talks about how his family allowed people in the family to bring books to the dinner table and to read during dinner. And I thought, dude, that is a wonderful, that's a wonderful memory. So I would encourage people to put their stories up there along with Jimmy Carter's, President Carter's, and to really leave a historical trace of what's important to them with regard to literacy for generations to come.